I'm Rob Shields, and this is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. On March 27th, more than 1,000 competitors descended on Atlanta, Georgia for the 2026 USA Jigsaw Nationals. Joining me to discuss and debrief on the 3 action-packed days that followed, per usual, is my partner in Puzzle Talk, E.B. Karen.
Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
And joining both of us is an extraordinary group of puzzlers, including Alice Rowe.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Jessa Douglas.
Hello, happy to be here.
Josh Trauger.
Hello, excited to talk to you all.
And new to the podcast and mostly new to competitive jigsaw puzzling, Lewis Dracobly-Helsel.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Lewis, to help people get a sense of who you are, give us a quick overview of your competitive history up until National.
Sure. My first competition I did was back in August. It was a Super Saturday in Seattle where actually, I met you. Before that, I timed myself for about a year and a half, closer to a year, and just kind of practicing in my downtime. And then after that, I was in Seattle, but I also go to school in Chicago. So I spent most of my time following that in Chicago, where I went to about 2 or 3 local competitions there before nationals. And I won one of those competitions that I won was a USA JPA sanctioned competition, which allowed me to get on the registration since, I wasn't as tapped into the whole world whenever the registration did go open. So I missed the first initial wave, but winning that competition in Chicago allowed me to get to US Nationals.
So you started competitive jigsaw puzzling in all of August, competed in a few things and won one. I mean, the one that I saw you in, I think you came in second?
Yeah, I came in second in the Seattle one, and I won the 2 Chicago ones I did. And then I guess I also won because I also did one of the Super Saturday in Chicago, and I won that one as well in the local Chicago, of course.
This is what we call pulling an Alice Rowe, by the way, is just kind of setting the world on fire the moment you show up. So I'm glad to have you here because you'll bring some new, fresh perspective to this whole conversation. And speaking of, let's just sort of go around the room and anybody who wants to take it up. But I would love to hear what people were thinking coming into this competition.
I was super excited. I knew I wanted it to feel different this year than the last 2 years that I was at Nationals. And I think I did that. I think I prepared myself mentally enough to go. And so it was a different feeling for me. I was much more relaxed and not as nervous. I mean, there's still the initial nerves right before each competition, but leading up to them, even the first moments right before opening the bag, it was a different feeling for me for sure. So I'm grateful for that.
I got that a fair amount from a lot of people, actually, that this year was people were in a different headspace. And I think sort of intentionally so. People put themselves in a different headspace this year. Was there stuff that you learned from the last year that you were like, oh, okay, well, we can do this better?
Yeah, for sure. I think I was able to wrestle with a lot of things from my first year and then my second year. Practicing at home, definitely with certain distractions and noises, but then also bringing stuff with me to help block out the distractions and noises while I was competing. But then also I think my mental game shifted in the sense that I let go of any expectations and pressure on myself, especially individually. I just wanted to enjoy whatever puzzle was in front of me, and I think I did that. I really enjoyed the puzzles.
I was pretty excited for a rather different reason. I was excited to bring my family to this event. It was a little more stressful having kids around and not having any quiet time when you're in a hotel room, but it was very exciting to show them this world.
Were they overwhelmed by the spectacle of competitive jigsaw puzzling?
Lincoln has been to Origins and been to a couple smaller competitions. Uh, I think he kind of understood, but it was a lot bigger than anything he's been to. I don't think my wife completely grasped beforehand how big it was if you were a puzzle person.
Alice, what about you?
I think that similar to Jessa, I was really trying to work on coming into it in a better headspace. And I think that the convention part of it like definitely helped. I think that helped lower the stakes of it, like not being just I'm going to this competition, like I'm gonna compete. Like for like DC, it's like you went there, you competed. Where this, it's like you were hanging out with puzzle people all the time. So like even if you weren't competing, like that was similar in DC, but like there were designated spaces and there were like special competitions. I don't know. So I think that really helped with like my mindset. And I think also like I was very busy leading up to nationals with like school, rugby, puzzling. So like just having so much to do and like not having this free time to like worry about like am I doing enough? Like am I practicing enough puzzles? Like just having stuff to do where I'm like today I can't puzzle, and that was almost helpful in a way as well.
So you found yourself coming in in a better headspace? Did all that work, I guess, is my question?
I think I was less stressed than like previous years, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was definitely like a little bit of a like sigh of relief. Like, okay, like I can do this. Like 2025 was very stressful. Like Worlds like 24 was like very stressful, and so having an experience where it wasn't was like, oh yeah, like this is more what like puzzling should feel like. It should be fun.
Lewis, what about you? This was you haven't been to a US Nationals before, I'm guessing?
I mean, I was certainly nervous. I mean, I just didn't fully know what to expect since, I've been to a few competitions, but nothing on this scale. Yeah, I mean, anytime there's a new thing, I'm kind of worried and get nervous. I mean, a little bit of what Alice was saying too is that like the few weeks, like the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to before nationals, I was pretty busy with school. Like, it's the end of my school quarter, so I was finishing work. So like especially like the prior 2 weeks, I mean, I didn't have a lot of time to puzzle, but I also didn't have a lot of time to think about or worry about what was going to happen. Luckily, I was in Seattle for a few days before, like 4 or 5 days before nationals. I was in Seattle for like my proper spring break, and I was able to get a bunch of practice in there to kind of help prep myself ready for. But yeah, it's definitely like I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I was definitely excited, but like it's just kind of an unknown area, I guess.
EB, anything you want to say here?
I was excited. I think about nationals like a big family reunion and like,
Mm-hmm.
including family members that I don't know yet. That at like the breakfast buffet, I'm like, hi, so you have a puzzle shirt on. It's hard to like move between floors without running into a bunch of people that you want to like say hi to and talk to. I do think having the convention makes it a little easier because it did feel a little more like there I would see that person again later on.
Yeah, the structure of this was a lot better physically. Like everything was the last time we did this, there was the competitive space, and then very far off and away was the sort of convention space. And those things weren't sort of intentionally weren't really combined together intentionally in so much as that the competition was added on to an existing conference. So this one felt a whole lot better. Like from the moment I was in there, like everything was, you were dealing with all and only puzzle people, which was nice. You knew it was in the sort of the same area. Lewis, this was your first time here. When you first came into the kind of convention competitive space, thoughts?
It's just a lot of people immediately, and like I think I came in around when the opening ceremony was, so there's also people I think people had already kind of gone onto the floor and were like sitting down ready for it. There was definitely, a little bit of like I wasn't entirely sure where to start. I know I ran into a few people I knew, so I kind of congregated with them a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely just, still a very new and very fresh environment.
It felt more, it's kind of a weird word, but kind of like what EB said with family. It felt more like home, because it felt like there's just my puzzle people here versus like last year at DC, you looked at people, you had no clue who they were or what they were there for. I mean, they were in costumes, so you kind of knew, but I kind of wandered around lost. I stuck with like my team and my pairs partner, but other than that, it didn't feel like I had a place to hang. And here this year, it felt like anywhere you went, you were welcome and at home.
This like nationals was the first time that like I competed with the same people who I had in the past. And so like my team of like Jessa, Hannah Scott, Kelly Burr, and then like pairing with like Hannah Scott again. It was like a fun experience to like go in and like know the people that you're like puzzling with. Like even though we hadn't puzzled in like months, it's like you still go right back to like last nationals and like how much fun you had there. So like I think that also helped with like a sense of familiarity of like I know the people who I'm puzzling with. I love puzzling with them. We puzzle really well together. And so like that helped decrease like stress as well.
When was the last time, Alice, you got to puzzle with any of the folks, either Hannah on your pairs or the wider team?
A team as a whole or like Hannah Nationals 25. Yeah.
Right. So similarly, Josh, when was the last time you got to practice with your pair or team?
Well, I did a couple small puzzles with Kyle at Origins, but other than that, Nationals 25.
Evie, what about you?
I had a practice weekend in Kentucky about a month
Right.
before.
It
With
seemed
Michaela.
intense.
No, it's
Okay.
fun.
There was a
Yeah.
lot of puzzling.
Yeah, lots of puzzling, but not intense.
Lewis, you had a pair, but if I recall correctly, you weren't in the team. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't have any teams. The pair was I was paired with KE, who is another, I guess, top puzzler in Chicago. And we had did a Super Saturday where we did pairs and pair relay together as more of an official practice. And then there's a few days where we got where I went over to their apartment and we had practiced on some 500-piece puzzles. So I puzzled with them pretty recently.
For those of you who hadn't puzzled in maybe as much as a year, was it as easy as just picking it back up, or was there some rust or dust that you had to deal with?
I think it was pretty easy. Like it was definitely there's like the first puzzle or two where it's like getting in the hang of things, but after that, I feel like we basically started where we left off like the year before. And like you're comfortable around each other, so we're just like reaching across each other, like putting in pieces. I think we were all like more willing to be like, hey, like I want this section, you do that section, like things like that. So just I think, yeah, we started where we left off and we just like went for it. And it was so much fun.
What about on your side, Josh?
I think initially there was some like getting to know each other, but it happened much quicker than in 2025. We did more pieces together the night before Nationals started this year, and I think that helped. And more just the familiarity with each other, knowing what roles people were more suited to take, knowing that going in helped.
Let's start with the first event, which was the individual qualifiers. Jessa, you were in the very first individual qualifier. Tell us a little bit about how that went for you.
I actually really like going first, even though it's like you don't know what to expect or you don't get a sneak peek. Like I feel like all the other prelims, you kind of it sets the tone. But I like going first because I just want to get it over with, and then I can relax the rest of the day. So this is I think last year I was first in the first prelim as well. But opening up that puzzle, I was like, oh, in heaven! It was beautiful.
Tell us a little about it.
Tropical vibes. It's very colorful. It had, a little bit of a sunset, a little bit of water, but colorful huts and flowers, lots of textures. So it felt like it was pretty seamless up until the palm trees.
That's right. There were what, 3 palm trees or 5? I can't remember.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I felt pretty good the entire puzzle. And then I remember having a moment. I think I had like 10 to 15 pieces left, and I looked at them and I was like, these do not belong to my puzzle. They're someone else's pieces. What are these doing here? And it took me a little bit to find just one piece to put in because they were just so similar. But after that, it went together pretty well. So I loved it. I thought it was a great puzzle to start the whole thing off with.
Nobody on this call was actually in Heat B for the individuals. So that was the Atlanta skyline at dusk. I believe so what I did is I took the top 20 in, finishers in each heat just to look at what their average time was. And this was the Atlanta skyline at dusk, the Heat B, that had the longest average time for that. And then we were off to Heat C, which is the rolling hills. And Lewis, you were in that one. What was your thoughts about that puzzle?
I guess when I first saw it, I kind of liked it. There's lots of certain colors that popped out, and I usually, at least recently, usually more like color sort or like pick out colors and do that versus like border or something else. So I kind of like that aspect of it, and I also just like the art as well. Just I think I tend to prefer like art puzzles versus photography puzzles. So I definitely like the puzzle, and I'd say I generally enjoy it. There's a few times where, similar sections that went on other sides, it threw me off a little bit, but I'd say it was a fun puzzle to do.
You were not alone. That turned out to be the fastest average puzzle amongst all of them. And then last was Heat D, which Alice, you, EB, and importantly myself were all in. Alice, talk a little bit about that puzzle because you did okay on it.
Okay, that one was called Front Porch Days, I think. And just to like describe it a little bit, it was like this porch, a few like chairs, that like wooden chairs. There was like a yellow piece of siding on the right side and like a door, and then like a bunch of like trees in the background. And I think like opening it up, I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be hard. I feel like it was very different from like the rest of the prelim puzzles, which like took me by surprise a little bit. But like there were always like little things to work on and like little things to pull. And like even at the end, like the trees, there were like pillars that like broke them up. So like a decent number of pieces had like hints that way, or like the trees on the left looked slightly different from the trees on the right. So like I feel like I was able to like go at it in a pretty good way.
And of course, I was giving you a hard time. You destroyed that puzzle. One of the ways that you can talk about how you did on that puzzle is I believe this is the fastest 500 individual in US Nationals at all. And you were almost 8 minutes ahead of the next person. So it feels like whatever you felt you were struggling with or could have been potential in your way, this puzzle maybe fell into your wheelhouse more than most people.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still like in awe. Like I'm shocked by that. But I think, yeah, I was just able to like pull small details, or like some way my brain was just like, do this, do this, do this. And like it worked out really well. I don't know. I'm excited to like time it again and see how it goes.
Your final time on that was 30 minutes, 39 seconds for the folks listening along at home. EB, what'd you think about that puzzle?
It was okay. Not my favorite, but I felt good about how I did, given that like it's not my thing. A little speed round before we move on to the next prelim rounds. Was there a theme this year? Yes or no?
I feel like probably no.
I don't know. You kind of think about all the puzzles, they kind of have like a scenic view. Most puzzles do, but kind of like you're looking, except for the porch one, it's like you're looking out of your porch and this is what you're seeing, like your window. I don't know. There kind of could be a theme.
Wait, I don't think there's really a theme, but like I agree with what Jessa was saying. They're all like outdoors. Like none of them are like an inside scene.
Exactly.
EB, do you think there's a theme here?
Well, Kara Taylor told me after round C, like, oh, the theme is landscapes this year. And then after round D, she was like, I was wrong. But then later I heard people talking like, oh yeah. So I think it's really like, do you consider D a landscape? Like how broad is your view of landscape? And I think like Jessa and Alice were saying, yeah, like could make an argument for it.
I mean, there are trees in that one. There's a little bit of grass. Like there is landscaping. I don't know if that counts as landscape.
I mean, I think there's trees in all of them. I'm pulling up round B. There's like oh yeah, there's some trees on the bottom. Maybe the theme was trees.
Well, I know that at least Val has said in the past, Val Coit, one of the board members, that there's not a strong theme typically. They have images that they can pull from, and if there's a theme, great, but not necessarily striving for something. So it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't think there was a theme. What do we think about the puzzle selection? Especially, I was thinking about like the level of difficulty, because I feel like last year we were sort of hit and miss on each round. Like there was hard ones and less hard ones. Do we feel like this is the right level of difficulty for the preliminary rounds this time around?
Yeah, like I'd say they all seem pretty. They all had like some parts that were maybe a little more straightforward, but then also parts that were easier to get mixed up, or they were just harder to do. I feel like that's kind of a good balance for prelims.
One of the things about the individuals is that, like we saw last year, the round A and C were both the average time was over an hour for folks to finish, for the top 20 folks to finish. Whereas this time around, all of the puzzles were under 47 minutes was the max, and the min was 42. So it was actually a pretty good range in the same band. I know that the board has in the past struggled with, like, we don't want to make things too easy in the preliminary rounds, but we still want to make things accessible in the preliminary rounds. So a lot of the folks on the call here are going to be the kind of people who breeze through easy puzzles. I didn't see a lot of breezing through here, but I am curious as to whether anybody feels like these were maybe too easy.
No, I think that they were a good mixture. I feel like they weren't too easy, except for the rising stars among us that can slaughter a puzzle. But I felt like it was, what I appreciated, that it felt, like you said, pretty even across all of the prelims. There wasn't one puzzle that was like that much harder or easier. It just depends on the puzzle and the puzzler, how fast they put the puzzle together. So I don't know. It's hard to say what would be like an easy puzzle, because we all have different skills when it comes to puzzles. So
I think that, like, especially in the prelims, I would rather have them be easier and make them more accessible to like a wider variety of people. And like, especially because like it's still very much a growing sport, so like trying to like build excitement and like people like doing really well like with these puzzles and like feeling really good about themselves is important.
Yeah, as a bottom of the bottom puzzler, I did enjoy that. Even though I was not going to crush this puzzle, I did feel like I was moving the entire time, which is actually really nice. Plus, I got to sit next to, unbeknownst to me until the very end, Alice's dad. We were both seated, I think he was 193 and I was 194 out of 200. So we were competing for the top. I think he later told me that I did beat him. So, one down, 190 odd more to go. But it was nice to see that at the end of the, like, you and your dad were in the same round. So it was actually kind of fun to see you finish and then kind of circle around and give him congratulations. Does he compete in a lot of competitions, or was he competing mostly for the first time here? Or?
This was his first competition. Yeah,
Yeah.
he decided, I think he like really liked the artwork in like the first couple rounds, and he was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And he crushed it. He did so amazing.
He later came by and introduced himself to me, and I was like, oh, you're the guy that I was sitting right next to. That's amazing. And it doesn't make me feel less good to have crushed a person whose very first competition was that day.
He's timed a puzzle or two before. He does a lot. Like, I think, like, ever since I've started puzzling, I basically just like gift people puzzles or like make them do puzzles with me, like things like that. So like he's definitely got roped into that of like, I want a puzzle, come do it with me.
I'm curious as to, one of the things I care about as a person who's passionate about watching the sport is the watching experience. I'm wondering if anybody had thoughts on the watching experience this time around as opposed to previous years. Anybody see the giant bleachers they brought in?
Those were funny. I was a bit when I walked in and saw them, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess those are bleachers.
Would you describe the size of these bleachers for us?
I mean, they're like the ones if you go to your local park and like baseball bleachers, but like half the size, I feel like, of of them. Where like I think if you were like sitting down on the lowest or second lowest, you'd be about the same height as the people in the chairs in front of you. Since the bleachers were like behind like a bunch of normal chairs, like I think the only way you'd really get height advantage is if you stood up on them, which I think I saw some people doing.
They were less a functional place that you could sit and more a mascot. Turns out there was a whole story apparently about how challenging it was to get bleachers into elevators, and that was ultimately the limiting factor here. They expected to have bigger bleachers, but they couldn't actually get bleachers up to that area, so this is what they ended up with. So the board, I think, had the right perspective on this. Like, well, this is not what we expected. We're just going to have fun with it. Josh, You didn't compete in individuals unless I'm missing out. What drove that decision?
When the schedule was released, I kind of made an internal decision that I was probably going to sit out individual finals even if I made it. And once my wife decided that her and the kids were coming for sure, I kind of decided if I'm not going to do finals, even if I make it, I'm just going to take all of Friday and go explore Atlanta with them and then train with my team Friday evening. So we explored Atlanta and it was a good day.
Is the reason that you decided that you weren't going to compete in finals something that you can share, or
It's just too much for one day. I wanted to be able to give my best to Connor and give my best to 3.5 men. And if I threw individuals into that also, it was going to be more than I wanted in one day.
we did see a number of people making decisions like that. I feel like opting out of individuals or teams, like just sort of right sizing the competition for themselves, sort of getting back to what we were talking about earlier with Jessa. Like the people seem to be making more healthy decisions in terms of their sustainability with this.
And I think that's good for everyone.
Did anybody take part in any of the other events that happened on day one? So there was, I believe, puzzle chess went on day one. There was a puzzle chess tournament, and there were also seminars on day one. Anybody attend any of the seminars or participate in puzzle chess?
I did do went to the puzzle one of the puzzle chess rounds. I think it was the first. Yeah, it was the first round because it was during the like A/B prelims was kind of when that was going on. And it was fun. That was the first time I'd ever done puzzle chess. I didn't really fully know what the rules were before that, prior to getting into the Cobble Hill special event room. But yeah, it was fun. It was a fun experience. I fortunately didn't make the playoffs because like my second match was against Hannah Doyle, who like completely crushed me. Um, and there were like 200 people and only the top 40 moved on, so you had to win like all four of your games basically, or like win three and like win a three by a lot of time or something to be considered for the finals for like the playoffs or whatever the system was. But it was still a fun experience. It's definitely like a different way of puzzling that I hadn't really done before. That was just fun to go do and fun to be at.
And my understanding was that the puzzle chess this time was structured slightly different than I'm used to it doing. Is it true that like you sort of sat down and then you sort of moved along through the puzzle chess events, as opposed to being assigned a person and then bracketing into the next person?
They had the brackets later, I believe, but the prelim part was everyone played 4 rounds. I was on the side of the table where you stayed in your seat, but on like the other side of the table, people would like move one seat over each round. So yeah, you ended up playing 4 people, and then depending on like the people who won the most, like I said, I believe it was 40, like the top 40 in terms of like win record, and then I think they used time as a tiebreaker. Then would go on to the playoffs, which I think happened like right afterwards. There was like a mini playoff to get down to like the top 2 or top 4 or something.
Hmm.
And then I know later that night there was like the final game or something, which I didn't go to, but it seemed like it was more of a proper final thing, which I guess was where it would have been the winner was crowned or whatever from both the like morning and the afternoon section.
I did like the idea of scaling puzzle chess in that way. Like you sort of sit down on one side and you stay there the whole time, or you're on the other side and things move. Like that seemed like a great way of sort of mixing it up, but also keeping things moving and being able to do puzzle chess at scale. One of the challenges with puzzle chess historically has been that you just need the people who are going to compete against each other to show up at the same time, do a thing, and then you just have a long series of that happening. So it felt like a really fun way of doing it. Did you just sit down in any chair, or did they assign you chairs, or like how did it get started?
You got checked in at the door, and then they told you a table to go to, I believe, because all the tables are numbered. And then you had a little like sheet of paper there. It's either one per match or one that like stayed at a specific table. But each round you'd like write your names in, and then you would write what time each of you had at the end. And then like the organizers would take it and then use it to figure out the results. But yeah, I don't think there was any like type of seeding or anything like that. I think it was pretty not really round robin, but just kind of random selection, which I think is nice. because, kind of the thing we were talking about a little bit earlier in terms of making the convention open to more people, maybe more people that are like beginners at the event or whatever, it gave them more of a time. They got to do 4 different competitions and 4 different puzzles against people. So that was just that was a neat aspect of it.
Did anybody attend a seminar that wasn't the one they were doing?
I attended your seminar, Rob.
Yeah, it sort of feels like cheating because I attended yours as well. But I'm curious. I'm curious as to there were seminars going the entire time, and I sat in on a few of them, and they were pretty sparsely attended, despite the fact that I think that there were a number of them that I was super excited to see. But there were a lot of other things competing for it. So I'm curious as to if folks on the call here were able to attend any of them, or if they went largely unattended for the fact that there are just so many other things going on.
It was definitely it's something I was aware of beforehand. And like I remember when I was looking kind of at the list of things the USA GPA had put on their website of what was happening, and there were a few there that I was like looked like they're interesting. I was like thinking about maybe attending, and a lot of them ended up getting in the ways of either my actual competitions or like the Cobble Hill special ones that I was doing. So I did a few of those, and even like just thinking back, like I didn't really spend as much time on the convention floor as I might have wanted to spend, especially with like the kind of fun, like bigger puzzles and things like that they had around, and walking around the booths, of course, all that. So, even if I maybe had the time to attend a session that I really liked, or I really wanted to go to, it was still the case where there's other stuff competing for, and it just, wasn't really enough time to go around always.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot going on. We haven't really even talked about the convention floor per se. So there was a main competition area. Adjacent to that was sort of the casual puzzling area, or the what I consider the Cobble Hill room, where all the other kinds of events like the Cobble Hill special events, but also puzzle chess were going on. There was a room for seminars, but then there was a whole other floor that had exhibitor booths, artist areas that you could get signings. Food was down there. There was lots and lots of tables for free puzzling, just kind of sit down and open up a puzzle and go at it, which I thought was great. So there were a lot of things that you could do. I felt that pull myself, especially because like I love to watch all of the competitions. So it's really hard to go do some of those other things when there's just so many things vying for your attention. EB, I went to your seminar. It was great. I loved it. I learned a lot of psychology things, which are always very exciting, especially not especially, but also the importance of uniforms in making team cohesion.
Yeah, that was a fun little fact. Me and my fun facts. I was pretty nervous about it because I wanted to prepare more and I just didn't have enough time. But it was so much fun.
I don't think we mentioned how the heats turned out. So for the individual qualifiers, Heat A was Kelly Walter, and then Heat B was Grayson Shannon, Heat C was Hannah Doyle, and then as we talked about, Heat D was Alice Rowe. Let's move along to day 2. So this is pairs. Josh, you were in pairs this time. You were competing on this day. What were your thoughts going into pairs? And then you were in Heat B, if I recall correctly. How'd that go?
Connor and I had practiced a fair amount on Friday, so we felt pretty strong going in. When we opened that box, there was a whole lot of dark log, and that's pretty much the only part of the puzzle I got to work on. So after sorting edges and sorting the lighter parts out, Connor had much of that assembled, and then it was just piece sorting by shape mainly. Visually, you're actually doing it and trying to find the tiniest of patterns on a brown log.
Yeah, it was a giant log running right through the middle of it. The name of that puzzle was called Moss. It was definitely a very earthy puzzle. Let's see, I was on that one. EB, you were in that one. Jessa, you were in that one. How did you guys feel about this puzzle?
I loved the sky and the blues and the greens. I just had to shout out my pairs partner, Kelly Walter, because we had never puzzled together up until this year's nationals. And so we had done one puzzle the night before for practice, and it was super late at night, not the best conditions. We were really tired. Wasn't the best outcome, but our communication, the way that we worked together during our pairs prelim was so lovely. She is a wonderful person to puzzle with. She had I worked on the edge and then I was done with it and there was just little piles to work on and we communicated well, but that log or the trunk of that tree was so hard.
Josh, you and Connor finished first in this round. Win as expected?
I think we both expected to do well. We had seen the results from prelim A, which in retrospect was not near as dark as what we dealt with. The log definitely slowed us down. I think we were both happy with the time, and we knew we had puzzled well, but as it took longer and longer and longer to find a second finisher, that gap was surprising to us.
It was 6 minutes, 58 seconds, I believe. So that is pretty substantial, especially in a pairs competition.
Yeah, we were sitting a bit, they were trying to get us on the live stream, and we're like, we want to congratulate whoever finishes second.
The average for the top 20 finishers was 35 minutes and 6 seconds, whereas the first puzzle was 26 minutes and 23 seconds. So pretty substantial difference in difficulty between those two puzzles. Speaking of the first puzzle, which we sort of just skipped right on past, this one was called Oceania. And Alice, you and Lewis were both in this round. What did you think about this puzzle?
I thought it was fun. It was definitely more of a pick and place than you would have expected, but once you got halfway through, you're like, oh, I recognize this piece. This goes here. This goes here. And it was just fun to be able to puzzle with Hannah. Every time I puzzle with her, it's just a blast. And so having an excuse and I have to sit down and time this puzzle with her. Oh no, I don't know. So just a good experience overall.
Yeah, I thought this was a refreshing change from most of Ravensburger's underwater scenes. This had a little bit more of a realism sheen to it. There were lots of nice little pieces to put in there and not too much turtle, which is usually my concern with large Ravensburger puzzles of underwater. Lewis, what were your thoughts on this puzzle?
I'd say it was kind of somewhat similar thing. It was kind of a nice puzzle. Wasn't too bad. I will say one thing that's kind of funny with the underwater scene is one of the last puzzles that me and Kate had practiced before, back in Chicago before the Nationals, was an underwater Ravensburger one that Kate had been like, oh, this one might be a good one for you to practice on. And I was like, I don't know, it looks kind of hard. And then we decided to do it together, and it ended up being pretty hard. So it's just a lot of kind of, as we were doing the puzzle, making comparisons back to that previous puzzle that we had done and flirted a little bit on. But definitely this one was, I think, went a little bit better than the underwater one we had done before, and it's a fun time.
And then we had teams qualifiers on the same day. They changed things up a little bit. They had a 500 piece and a 1,000 piece rather than two 1,000 pieces. What do we think about that format?
I thought it was great. I thought it gave them a lot of flexibility in what they did with the difficulty of both puzzles. If it's only 1,500 pieces total, they can still make both of them a little bit more on the difficult side, and it's not going to be as tough on a team of 4 at the lower end. I stated on the live stream that I loved the 500 to start because it felt like you were sprinting to start as a team and you got your adrenaline moving, where even on a fast 1,000, it's not quite the same as a 500.
And those 500s went down fast. And I think they went down pretty similarly between the two heats. I think they were both 14 minutes and some seconds, which is a real fast time for 4 people to be in there trying to get something put together and then off the table.
Not to butt back in and go backward, but I feel like we talked about all of the winners and the other individual prelims. We didn't mention Hannah and Caitlin absolutely demolishing the first prelim pairs puzzle.
No, it's true. And I have a special place in my heart for the girls in STEM. And I did love to see both Hannah and Caitlin, but also Chloe and Sky do really well in their respective pairs part. So I'm glad you brought that back up, Alice. Thank you. But now, since you're the last person to talk, what do you think of the format for the teams?
I enjoyed it. I think it was fun to have a different format going in. but like I do really like the two 1000s as like a team. I might be biased, like I get to spend more time with my team, but like I don't know. I think like our team does really well with like challenging thousands and like the 1000-piece format in as a whole. So like maybe it's also like we benefit from it, but I think the thousands are really fun and like you don't do them in any of the other competitions, so it's like it's a fun mix up.
Girls in STEM, by the way, took Heat A. What did folks think about Heat B, which had sort of a rocky cliff scene and then a decimated theater scene?
I think it was fun. Like they were both very challenging, like for like their piece counts respectively, but like I'll always have like good memories of like going back and like solving this really hard puzzle and like us passing around the curtain pieces and it's like can someone work on the curtains, like they all look the same, like things like that where like you wouldn't get those memories if it was just like you do this chunk, you do this chunk.
Was this the puzzle where I looked up, Josh, and the area right in front of Connor was all complete, and then like the other parts were coming together? And I'd heard somebody say, and I don't know if this is true, maybe you can help me understand. Is there a 500-piece cut inside of the Ravensburger 1,000-piece cut, or is it the same as the 500-piece cut, or is it different? Because I know that Connor has some familiarity with the 500-piece Ravensburger cut. And I feel like I heard somebody say that, the reason that Connor had finished that part was because it was very similar, if not the same, to the Ravensburger 500 cut. But also, Connor tends to finish what's in front of him. So I wasn't sure how much thought to put into that.
So the 500 cut is a portion of the 1,000 cut. It's one
Hmm.
corner. I'm not positive that it was the corner Connor was in front of, though. But Connor kind of just gets fed pieces. So it would make sense that what is in front of him is finished. I don't think he moved on that puzzle at all either. But also, that side of the puzzle was noticeably less complicated than the left, in my opinion.
No, I agree. As I said before, people seem to move right to left on this puzzle, and that was the part that was right in front of him. So 3.5 Men came out first in that heat.
Connor's ability with the 500 piece Ravensburger cut is pretty extraordinary. So that was a helpful jump at the beginning for 3.5 Men. After the 2025 Nationals prelim experience we felt much better after this year's.
Remind us a little bit about that 2025 prelim.
2025 Nationals prelim, brand new team, come in sitting at table one, and we get the frog, tiger, muck, book blur disaster to start and did not handle it well. Struggled with challenging puzzles, which I feel we've improved on somewhat, but it was a rough start finishing fourth in that prelim. It felt a lot better finishing better in our prelim this year.
Yeah, and maybe even having, to your earlier point, having the 500 to sort of chew on to get the juices flowing could maybe even help that a little more. Not that the puzzles are necessarily directly comparable to last year's, but that gives you a confidence boost early on.
Absolutely.
What about the Cobble Hill events from that day? So Cobble Hill unveiled a new format, the Cobble Together format. Can somebody talk through their experience with that format? Tell us a little bit about what that ended up being and how it worked.
That was super fun. Hannah and I ended up pairing with like our people who were there respectively. So like she paired with her husband and then I paired with my dad. And so we were like the two teams. And basically how it worked was like each of you got just a bag of pieces and then you got the other team's image. And so you had to like communicate what they should be puzzling like while you're working on it. And so it was fun because Hannah and I like had our prelim for pairs and like ran like right over there. And so we were able to compete, but just like being able to have like a lower stress like competition and have fun. Like this was the first official like pairs competition I had done with my dad. So like things like that were super fun. And like, I don't know, just like a new format and like Cobble Hill has like amazing images. So just like being able to puzzle more was amazing.
Yeah, nobody was coming in feeling like they had to be really prepared for the Cobble Together competition, and nobody was worried about being the best in the country at this competition that nobody had really ever heard of before.
It was so much fun. I did it with Kelly Walter, my pair's partner, and we were opposite of Karen Nill and Kelly Burr, who were paired up. And so it was really fun to try to communicate. We didn't know what we were puzzling. So Kelly and Karen were the ones that were communicating to each other. We didn't have a lot of room, and the Cobble Hill pieces are a little bit larger than your normal like Ravensburger pieces. And I just started building the edge. And at one point I realized I was doing it upside down, but I had already committed. So we were doing the ceiling. We had the puzzle. It had squirrels on faces, I believe, or cake platters. I don't even remember honestly what I puzzle most of the time because I'm not looking at the whole image. I'm just looking at like, the colors and the shapes. And I'm like, oh, there's a blue blob over here and I'm going to put it together. So it was really fun. We were sitting next to half of the girls in STEMP and they were a hoot. They were cracking us up the entire time and we had a great time.
There was also a teams relay that same day. Lewis, I think you were involved in that. You want to tell us a little bit about what that was all about?
Yeah, I was in the team relay. It was 2 1,000-piece puzzles, and then two teams, one big team of 8, split in half for on each 1,000-piece puzzle, and then whenever you'd rotate, you'd go 2 seats to the left every 5 minutes, so you'd end up getting about 10 minutes on the same puzzle, just split between like 2 different sides of it. I'd say it was pretty fun. I definitely felt like it took a while, but like, it's 1,000-piece puzzle, so it kind of makes sense. It was just maybe a bit longer than I was kind of expecting going into it, or I maybe more like I didn't fully thought through how long it would take. Like it makes sense, to take that long in retrospect. But I did feel a little bit kind of like exhausted by the end of it. But it was still fun. I do like the relay formats, like when I've done it before. So like I'm always happy to see more of that kind of relay switching between puzzles event kind of format happening.
Yeah, I do feel like relays are the sort of theme of this last year, the new sort of emergent hotness that we'll continue to see, I think, for a little while going forward. Do we feel like relays would be fun as a more formal competition, or do they really fit into the more social component of things?
I think half of the enjoyment with relays is that they're not as serious.
Because they ask, I second what Josh was saying. Like I think that kind of that makes them pretty fun and like a nice way to relax a little bit more.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about these sort of lower stakes competitions is it gives everybody a chance to sort of mingle, which we don't have. I don't think we've cracked that nut quite yet in the world of competitive jigsaw puzzling, where you've got a bunch of people with a shared passion. Often they come together, they compete, and then they sort of go their own ways. And like having these other opportunities to sort of formally get together and hang out. Like Lewis, you didn't come in with a team of 8 ready to do this event. It sort of, I imagine, happened organically as during the competition, which is a great way of suddenly having some other people that you have something in common to hang out and do a fun activity with.
Yeah, that was definitely nice. There's just one person I knew in Chicago that we were both doing the event and we found each other in line, but the other 6 people were I hadn't met before. So like definitely, that part was kind of fun and like getting to work with new people. Always nice.
One of my favorite not central events is the speed run. So the speed run is where they issue a puzzle. You can complete it as many times as you want throughout the course of a year. And then there's basically a leaderboard for individuals, pairs, and actually teams of 3 and teams of 4. And you're just trying to get the most that you can out of the as many trials as you want. And some folks did well over 200 trials of this puzzle. This was the Quilted Critters puzzle. I'm suddenly blanking on who makes that puzzle.
Puzzle Twist.
Puzzle Twist. Thank you. They held an event on Saturday evening, which was basically an invitational for anybody to bring their version of that puzzle in and compete with it. It's more of an exhibition than anything. The official times had already been taken. So this was just a fun place to gather a bunch of folks together who had been working on this puzzle for as much as a year and compete with them in individuals, pairs, in teams scenarios downstairs in the kind of casual puzzling area. And as was last year, this is perhaps one of my favorite things to watch, just because you see the absolute far end of the performance of one person putting together a puzzle or four people putting together a puzzle, because they practiced this one puzzle just a ton of times. And so I know that coming in, I think Nicole Pichette had the fastest time of 17 minutes and 17 seconds putting together a 500 piece puzzle from scratch. And that is just alarmingly fast. And what's fun to watch is that so they had a bunch of people come in, do that competition, do the individual things, and people are using a bunch of different ways of getting that done. There was a gentleman who would take a piece out of the box, like without even dumping the box out, and sort of dead reckon the piece and do that with everything. Whereas other people would dump it out and then sort. Almost nobody flipped anything because that just takes too much time. And by the time you've done it, 100 plus times, you've basically got everything memorized. But then folks came together. So they did an individuals sort of competition, again, more of an exhibition that night, a pairs version, and then a team of four. And the team of four that came together was the folks who had won the individuals and the pairs, and then the people who were basically the next people. So that was Zin Pua, Nicole Pichette, Jasmine Lambert, and Emily Chandran all came together to do the teams version of that. And the team's time coming in, the best time was 7 minutes and 34 seconds. And this sort of ad hoc team of folks who came together that night crushed that time. They finished in 7 minutes and 5 seconds. And then, as has happened the one other time I've seen people compete this one, they were like, well, we can do this faster, and immediately did it again and did it in 6 minutes and 36 seconds. So 4 people, a 500 piece puzzle, 6 minutes and 36 seconds. If that isn't the pinnacle of human like puzzling activity, I don't know what is. And so it was a thrill for me. I deeply enjoyed watching that.
I was there.
That's right. That's where I learned that you had your name or my name on the back of your shirt.
Oh yeah.
One of the many deeply flattering moments of my weekend was that Evie's team was the bucket list puzzlers. And you can tell the story of why that is, but I think you told it on the last episode.
Yeah, I think so. Go back and listen to the last one.
It's late. Evie's tired.
Plus, we got to get to finals.
But they had a list on the back of their shirts of people that they'd wanted to puzzle with that they hadn't puzzled with yet, and my name was on there, and it was deeply flattering. In any case, if you ever get a chance to watch the folks do speed run of a puzzle, it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, it was really cool. I did get the speed run puzzle for this year, but I haven't done it yet.
It looks harder. The one that just finished was called Quilted Critters, and it had basically 12 boxes on it, so you knew what was in each box. This one is less well-defined.
Wait, I feel like I'm almost like the opposite. Like I do the like speedrun puzzle once. And so I've done like this new one once, and then like I did the other one in like January, and I felt like this one was a lot easier than the other one. But I don't know how that'll shape up like once you do it over and over and over again.
I know that you don't like doing puzzles more than once, but I'm excited to see you do this one 100 times. For the science.
Yeah. Like homework can take a back seat. Like I'm just going to sit in my room and do it over and over and over again.
It'll only take you like 15 minutes by the end, Alice.
That's right.
But I need to start. It'll take a while to get down to 15 minutes though.
All right, let's move on to day 3. Day 3 is the finals day. We had pairs finals, individuals finals, and teams finals. This is where it all comes together. Anybody want to talk about how pairs final went? So this one, pairs finals, we were looking at a puzzle called Sweet Playground, which was an unusual puzzle from the artist that doesn't usually do lots of busy puzzles. I would love to hear somebody talk about their feeling once this puzzle became available. Like once you opened the bag and you saw this puzzle.
It's definitely, for seeing it, I'd say it seemed a little bit harder than it might have been. I mean, there's also the fact of like, sometimes when I look at a box, I'm like, oh, this feels really well defined on the box. And then when I started like flip over the pieces and try to sort that out, I'm like, wait, no, this isn't actually that well defined on each piece. And there's definitely a bit of that going on. But I think in the end, it did ultimately like at least for me and Kate, felt like we were doing it a bit smoother than maybe I would have like initially expected seeing that image, or I
Mhm.
would have guessed beforehand if I'd like seen the image.
Josh, I know that you and Connor talked about not necessarily being the best at busy puzzles, or at least that isn't the kinds of puzzles you gravitate towards. So, what were you thinking when you saw this puzzle come out?
Yeah, it's a really cool image. It's not my favorite kind of image to puzzle. There were moments where I was wishing I had fish and fuchsia in front of me instead, which is pretty wild to think about. Uh, but
That was last year's finals.
yes, I just worked on sorting as much as I could, as long as I could, keep keep well sorted piles in front of Connor. And, you know, by the point I really got into puzzling, there was enough to build off of that I could find pieces that fit. But I was surprised the times were as low as they were with what I thought was a relatively challenging puzzle.
Yeah, because you guys finished it. You guys finished first, 25 minutes, 11 seconds. That doesn't necessarily scream challenging puzzle.
It was the longest any 500 piece puzzle took Connor and I this weekend. So challenging. Connor's killing it. So I just try and help manage pieces, sort as well as I can, keep him with a positive attitude.
I did love watching you guys finish that puzzle, and especially Connor right at the very end, because there becomes a moment, and like Valcoid actually said this on the live stream well in advance of it happening. Like this kind of puzzle, when you get closer to the end, like you just have a bunch of random spaces, and as you get closer to the end, you're basically picking up a piece. You kind of have a really good idea of where that piece is going to go. So she said it was going to close fast, and man, did you guys close that puzzle fast? Even knowing the answer, I was watching the live stream back again. Even knowing the answer, I was like, well, they've got only less than a minute left and they have all of these pieces. There's no way. And the closing speed on that puzzle was just phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that Hannah and Caitlin were beating us for a while on that puzzle. Now, it's probably not the best habit to always look over, because if you had asked me again, I would have been convinced the puzzle was oriented different on their table than it actually was. So maybe that shows that I wasn't looking too closely. Uh, but yeah, I think our ability to close the puzzle kind of separated us at the end.
I think this puzzle was really hard to sort. So I think you should give yourself a lot of credit for that.
I think it can often come off as the sort of the Connor show, but I think that hopefully in the conversations we've had with you, Josh, it's become clear to folks that like that there is more than just being the other person at the table when it comes to Connor, right? Like there's a lot of the coaching, which is critical, but also a lot of the setup, right? Like the making sure that like feeding Connor, like feeding a high performant other person is not necessarily just grabbing all random pieces, right? Like that is somebody who's going to take pieces fast. So you got to set them up fast. Like that is an actual skill. And you know, yeah, you didn't compete in the individual, so I can't point at a score there. But like you are not a slouch when it comes to puzzling to begin with. So I don't think just anybody could sit in that seat.
I appreciate the compliments. Uh, yeah, I mean, there's challenges to it, right? You have to kind of be willing to put yourself in a secondary position and able to like allow your pair to be faster.
One of my favorite Connor moments, I have to say, is not necessarily a Connor moment at all, but I was standing next to his mother and grandmother, I believe, watching the competition. And when you guys finished this puzzle, they both burst into tears, which was just delightful to watch. They had a lot of, I don't know, like a lot invested. Like it seemed very meaningful to them, this moment that you guys could bring this puzzle across the line.
I think it meant a lot to Connor, so therefore it meant a lot to them. There's a really cool picture out there that one of the uh, journalists or photographers got of his mom right as we finish, and her like putting her hands to her face crying, and Connor's grandma is actually celebrating hugging my son Lincoln, and it's just a really cool picture that we'll be able to have for forever at this point. But yeah, it was, you could definitely sense that it was very important to them, and that's why the emotions came.
Lewis, how about you? What was your experience with this?
It was really a fun time. I know I talked a little bit briefly about this kind of like when we first saw the puzzle, me and Kate first saw the puzzle, but like definitely as we went moving and like really got into it more, you know, it was super fun. And previously in our heat and in my heat, neither of the previous two like competitions I'd done, I had got quite as high as I did on this one. We got me and Kate got eight, and like I think we had gotten like 12 or 13 in our heat. So it's not something we were necessarily expecting, and definitely as we were getting near the end, or not near the end, like as we were getting farther along, and like you can tell when the first people finish because you hear all the clapping and cheering, and like we'd gone fairly late in the puzzle, and like hadn't heard anything. I was like, wow, we might actually be doing pretty well in that one. And like it was a really great feeling when we finished, and kind of like realizing that we ended up in the top 10. And like
Lewis, do you feel like the Paris final kind of like bumped you up, or like that's not the wrong word, but like
Gave you momentum?
like yeah, give you momentum going into the individual finals?
yeah, I would say so. Like it definitely got me feeling a little bit more confident or better. I mean, I guess we're moving on to the individual finals, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But as I kind of mentioned before, I got 10th in the prelim or the heat, which isn't a bad time, quite good. But I was like, okay, maybe I'll get top 10, and I was like more realistic, probably get like top 20, and then definitely doing as well as I did in the pair kind of helped boost my like lose my expectations, or maybe feel more confident in my ability. And like yeah, definitely that was like a big part. And then you know helped me feel more in the zone as I moved into the individual final.
So transitioning to the individuals, I assume that pretty much everybody had figured out that it was a circle puzzle before the bag came open. EB, no?
No.
So what did you think once you opened that bag?
I'm not sure exactly what my first thought was, but I know like as the puzzle progressed, I was like, I love this as a fan of the sport. As a puzzler, I'm not loving this right now. But I thought it was such a great twist. I still love it. It was a wonderful twist. I also appreciate that I predicted circles and they did show up in a different place than where I predicted them.
Alice, did you recognize that it was a circle puzzle before you opened the bag?
So I was sort of like sitting on the side, like trying to like calm my nerves, like wait till the last possible moment to like come onto the floor. But like a couple people like came up and they're like, "Hey, like it's a circle puzzle," like just to like get your like mindset right. So I was expecting it for like the 5 minutes like before, but there's only so much you can do with that information. Like I hadn't done a circle puzzle, like practiced a circle puzzle in months. Like, and so I'm like, how do I do this? Like, is it going to be circle of colors where there's like the distinct sections, or like, what's the best way to attack this? I think it was especially challenging, like in the smaller space. Like, I'm very much someone who likes to have the edge done. So I'm like, how much of the edge can I complete? And like, I don't want like my pieces like to be too piled on top of each other, but like, so I was like trying to like weigh like the pros and cons of like different strategies. And then once I like got into it, I was just like, okay, I'm doing what I'm doing. Like whatever my like instincts tell me, I'm just gonna like follow them and like hope for the best.
So it wasn't a typical Ravensburger circular puzzle. Like there was no colors going around. It didn't have any sort of symmetry on it. It was basically like a square puzzle with a circle cut out of it. Was that at all throwing anybody, or was that better or worse than a typical Ravensburger circle puzzle?
For me, is definitely 'cause before this, I'd done like a circle of colors one a few days before nationals, and I'd done a few more in the past like months. And definitely this this type of like kind of straight on image, not necessarily like rotating design, I found a lot easier because there's enough pieces where you could tell like kind of the orientation the piece had to go based on it being the cut making like a spiral almost, or like a bunch of concentric circles. But if you looked at an individual piece, you could tell like it had to be there's like I guess four possible orientations it could go and still fit within like the circular piece cut. And you could look at the design in the piece. Like one area that was especially useful is like the waters. And like if you looked at the box, the water was all going horizontally. There's a bunch of horizontal lines, and you could look at a water piece and know basically exact orientation it would go based on the lines had to be horizontal. And obviously there's like one way it wouldn't, and it was obviously just this corner of the puzzle, so there's only really one orientation it could go. It seemed like the orientation was a lot easier to pin down, and like kind of the way the image was just helped with that a lot, of like figuring out exactly where the piece, pinpointing exactly where the piece could go.
Jessa, what did you think about this puzzle?
Well, I heard rumors as well that it was going to be a circular puzzle, like as people were seeing the bags. So I hadn't really practiced any circular puzzles. I think I had done one just because I had ran out of 500-piece puzzles to do. So I was like, I might as well do this one. But it didn't make me nervous. I was just like, okay, I can do circle puzzles. But I did worry about my space management because I'm not always good with that. But it ended up being just fine. I did the frame first. I did use my Zacco Puzzle Boards tray for that stinking bridge that was like getting in my way the entire puzzle. And so it did help to put those pieces on the tray and save them till the end. And I think just overall, it was a wonderful experience mentally for me. And so I could care less what placement I was. Just as far as I felt, it was amazing.
One of the things I really enjoyed about this particular puzzle was the number of different approaches that this brought out that we didn't see as much in other puzzles. Like some people started with the frame and then sort of filled in sort of towards the middle. Some people started with the bridge, so you just see the bridge and like nothing else. A lot of people started with the sort of upper left quadrant. So Alice, I'm wondering if you could talk through sort of how you ended up working through this puzzle.
Yeah, I was one of like the bridge last people. I found it really interesting how some people decide to do the bridge first, and like I was still struggling with it when those were the only pieces I had left. But I was more the other way where like I did most to the edge, and then I like did the blue sky and like those buildings in the top left corner. I like went back and forth with like all the flowers on like the right side. Like for most of them, I thought it would be easier to like see them, but like I would grab a few, put them together, and then like I kept coming back to them over and over again. Then did like the water, like it was fun to like have swans, ducks in the water, like that definitely made it easier. And just like animals are really cute to puzzle. I don't know. I feel like I like those. And then like I finished with like the bridge and like working from like the far like end of the bridge like closer to me. Yeah.
You finished first. Were you surprised by that, or like did you feel like you were in a good groove the entire time? I watched you finish up the bridge and it seemed like that could have been frustrating because as you said, I think you said this on the interview, like you were still trying to get it to click in your head, sort of the parts of the bridge. So were you just kind of flowing through it and it was what it was, or was that challenging mentally, or how'd that go?
I think at that point as well, it's like you're so like there's so much adrenaline. You're like, what's gonna happen? And so like that made the bridge more challenging as well. And like you're shaking and just like trying to put in the last few pieces. But yeah, I was not like I didn't go into nationals like expecting to win again. I feel like nobody does. Like there's always new people, like depending on the puzzle, like anyone can win. So I was just trying to have as much fun as I could. Like that was sort of my motto. Like I'm coming here to like see friends I really enjoy hanging out with, like doing puzzles, something that I haven't had as much time to do. And so like this is a designated weekend for that. And so I was just like trying to have the most fun possible.
It probably didn't hurt to win in terms of your fun having.
Yeah, no, it was really special to like have my dad there as well. Like just since this was like my spring break, like he traveled to like puzzle, but like also see me. And so like if he hadn't been there, I wouldn't have seen my family until like I'm going home in June. So just like having him there as well, I feel like was amazing and like a super special addition to the weekend. So like I had someone to go to when I finished. I don't know.
Well, congrats on being a 2-time national champion.
Thank you so much.
Let's talk about the team's finals. Now we're into 2,000 piece puzzles rather than the prelims 500,000. That feels right for the finals of a team's. I'm curious as to what folks' thoughts are on these puzzles compared to last year's puzzle. Jessa, your eyes are twinkling. Do you have a perspective there?
I mean, I can't speak highly enough of these puzzles, but they were so much easier, I believe, than the last year's finals. I forget what the first one was for the last year's
Like
finals.
Lake Tahoe, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, that one was fairly easy. But obviously Jewel Jungle was a beast of its own. So I feel like these two puzzles for this year, they had so much areas that people could work on that if you have somebody on your team that is good in certain areas, then you can put them on those areas. I felt like it was just those were great team puzzles, and they were on the easier side, in my opinion.
So tell me how your team approached this puzzle, Jessa. I can imagine, given the folks on this team, that maybe this was more of a fun exercise than it was a highly competitive exercise. Not that you guys aren't competitive, but, it seems like you guys are there to have a good time.
We definitely had a good time with both these puzzles. I love gradients and I love sky, and both those puzzles had those for me. And so I felt like it was a year where I was for the first time like saying, I want to do this. And I don't think I did that last year. I think I was kind of more like, whatever you guys need me to do, I will, fill in and do this. But this year I did feel a little bit more confident in taking on, like I did the windows and I did the frame for the cabin puzzle, and then I did the windows. And then the second puzzle came out and it was just like, oh my word. Like, this is the most heavenly puzzle. And I think we all felt it. Like, we finished that first puzzle first, and it was like, this is make or break whatever this next puzzle is going to be. And when it came out, I think all four of us felt like, okay, let's do this thing. And I did say, like, I was willing to take on the frame and the sky and the ocean, but I was also like, if someone else wants to do it with me, I don't want to be selfish. And they're like, no, I think this is just such a wonderful thing that I love is the team part of puzzling, because not only like are you encouraging others, but you get to be encouraged. And I think feeling the confidence of my team, it's going to make me emotional. They were all three of them like, no, Jessa, you've got this. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was just like, okay, I this is my time. Like, I've got to do this. And you wonder, for a split second, like if you have what it takes to take on all that on your own. So I ended up taking just all the blues, and then Alice ended up taking the bottom part of the frame with the sand that went on forever. And I felt like our team just was so cohesive and so great at communicating, that there wasn't like any like moments where we were confused or questioning things. It was like we called things out and we made decisions and we acted on it so quickly. It was beautiful.
So winning in a real sense was sort of secondary to the entire process.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like the moment, I mean, it was pretty emotional. You can see on the live stream when we finished. I don't know if we've actually as a team processed it together yet, and I can't wait to do it, but I haven't even told Alice this, so this is the first time I'm saying it to anybody. But I remember thinking as we were getting close to putting in those last few pieces and nothing was happening, it's just you're waiting, you're holding your breath thinking there's somebody else, there's another team that's going to finish, but we still are in it, like go as fast as you can, but you're just like you're bracing yourself for another team to finish. And that never came. And so there was a split second when we put those last pieces in, I'm getting goosebumps, where I didn't believe it. I doubted. It's like we're not worthy, but we did it, and it would only lasted for half a second. And then it was like that realization and that joy that came over us was unexplainable. It's so, you can't explain it until you're in that position of like what it feels like to be done first before other cheers are happening around you. And I just am so glad that I got to share that with 3 other beautiful humans that I love. It was a beautiful moment.
Josh, as the team who was trying to crush their dreams, how did this set of puzzles go for you?
We enjoyed them both as well. I thought they were great puzzles. They both offered, think if you asked most jigsaw puzzlers what they like in a 1,000-piece puzzler, in a 1,000-piece puzzle, both of these puzzles picked up a lot of those elements. You had sky, you had pretty water, had great aesthetics to look at. On the second puzzle, you had bright colors. It was, both of them were a lot of fun.
One of the things I thought was interesting about these puzzles is that the split times for each of them were pretty similar. So they were pretty balanced in terms of the level of difficulty. Did it actually feel that way in puzzling them? EB, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like I have nothing like Jessa's words were so beautiful and like, I got goosebumps listening to them. So I feel like nothing I can say will compare. That was beautiful.
Congrats, Jessa. You've destroyed EB.
I love you, Amy.
Alice, were you going to say something?
I feel like I like for at least the first puzzle, I like received like a lot of the sorting and it's like, here, do this pile, which was like so much fun. And then like slightly jealous of Jessa on the second puzzle, but like we all like communally came to a decision where like you need to do this. This is like the best thing for our team. You're gonna have so much fun doing it. It's gonna keep morale high. But I got like stuck on some of those shells, which were the more challenging part of the second puzzle, but like still they were so much fun. And just like having these people around me to share the experience with, like it's a highlight. Like I'm gonna remember these moments for the rest of my life. And I'm so grateful I got to experience it with them, like in particular.
So I want to hear how people's perspectives on this event were, especially in comparison to prior events. And I'd love to especially hear like things that you really loved about this and things that maybe still have an opportunity to be improved. Maybe Lewis, you can start us off by, as a new person to this event, overall, how was your experience?
I mean, it was really fun. Like, obviously, I don't quite have anything to compare it to, as I talked about a little bit before, in terms of past nationals or past puzzle competitions on this scale. Um, but like, definitely, felt like a bigger version of smaller competitions that I had competed in Seattle or in Chicago, and like, yeah, it was just really had a blast, kind of seeing people maybe I hadn't seen in a while, and just like yeah, being in the same area and same space with lots of other like fellow puzzlers who, love to do puzzles, whether it be like more competitively or just like more casually, and just kind of really getting immersed in that. Definitely, I'd say like the special competitions or something I especially enjoyed, of like the puzzle chess and the team relay, and definitely something I wish that I wish I had got to do the blanking on which the cobbled together that one, or like the gauntlet. Like both of those are ones that I wish I had, you know, they were running times when I had free time or were just like more around or more available. But like the puzzle chess and the team relay were both definitely fun, and I'm glad I got to do those in addition to all the like the other wonderful mainline competitions and events.
Alice, it feels like this was maybe a win for you all the way around. Is that true? And then is there anything that you would love to see still being improved towards the future?
I feel like I'm like, I don't know what comes next right now. Like, there's so many like unknowns, and like with school and like rugby, like it's hard to plan for the future, but I'm still going to practice and like see where life takes me. I don't know. I feel like it was an amazing weekend. Like, I'm so glad that I was able to like attend. I feel like I was in a good like headspace. And so like I was able to deal with like the stress emotions like a lot better than I had in the past. And like anytime, like any excuse to like hang out with people and talk puzzles who know about puzzles is like a great time. Like, I have to go back to like what Evie said at the beginning of like, it's like a family reunion. Like, you get to see these people like once or twice a year, but like every time, like I look forward to it all year.
Josh, what about you? Is there sort of overall feelings, things that went well, and any things that are opportunities to improve?
The first feeling that always comes to me is thankful for the community, for USA JPA board, all the volunteers. I mean, this doesn't happen without them. I don't think they make their job going forward any easier by continuing to raise the bar. Um, but hopefully they can continue to do it because it just keeps getting better. Uh, 24 was an awesome national championship. 25 was it was okay. I mean, they put the races on. It was still great to see everybody, but this year's nationals were on a completely other level. I don't know where they take it from here, but I'm excited to see it.
Anything that is still something to work on?
I still think 3.5 men would love to give it another go. Hopefully, we can make that happen. I kind of hope Jiggernauts keeps it together because having them there as kind of a rival is pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if they've looked at the times between our two teams over the whole weekend or even over last year and this year, but on the weekend, we did 3,500 of the same pieces and we're separated by 17 seconds. And I think when you add in 25 nationals, it's 5,500 pieces and we're separated by 25 seconds, which is pretty
Okay.
incredible. So maybe we can keep that rivalry going, friendly rivalry going.
Jessa, what about you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think it was exceptional. Overall experience was 100 out of 10. I think, yeah, the board did an exceptional job with the planning and the events, and it's always great to hang out with puzzle friends. I think it gets better and better with each year, and so they do have a high bar, but I think that they are more than qualified to continue setting that bar high. Um, I don't know if there's anything to improve on. I think it would be cool to see a youth division, some more variety in the competitions maybe, and what they're offering and just being more inclusive of different peoples. So different ages, whatever that looks like. But I mean, I cannot complain. This year was so good.
Evie, what about you?
I want to say, kind of going off what Josh said, I think the family reunion atmosphere starts with the board and how warm and welcoming and fun they set the tone. And so just thank you to them. And it was amazing. Specifics, I'll start with the improve so I can make a compliment sandwich. Gotta be the bleachers.
Do you want C2 next year?
I'll just leave it at that. But my last thing that I wanted to say, when we did our pre-nationals roundtable, I like put out into the universe that I was really hoping for a unicorn. And on the Rose Cat Con Pairs Final Puzzle, there was a unicorn. I actually didn't notice it because it was on the edge and Michaela did the edge, but it was there. And I did get to notice the Pegasus bonus. So, unicorn and a Pegasus. Yeah, 100 out of 10.
Yeah, I told the board at every opportunity I had what an amazing job they had done this year, on top of amazing prior years. So I agree with the sentiment that if anybody's going to help make this even better next year after having raised the bar so far, I have utter faith in the current board to do that, especially in light of seeing things like Worlds, where it's not an obvious given that an event like this is going to come off as well put together, as well organized, as climate controlled as you might take for granted. So to me, it was a very special experience. I love that they are doing it. I love how they're improving it. I love that they listen over and over. We heard them maybe not nail, again, back to the bleachers, the answer to the questions we were asking in terms of improvements, but they made real tries at them every time. And the things that were sort of problematic became not problematic this year. So I think that they just keep honing that and making it better and better. So all of this Love Fest is really to say that if you're considering going to nationals next year, you should 100% do it. You should do it because there are lots of great people. The community is amazing, and an amazing community is trying to make an amazing event happen. And it goes with the board, it goes with all the volunteers who support the board, and it goes with the community who's there. So it is definitely worth doing. And all of that stuff trickles down to your local competition. Like your local competitions are almost entirely a small microcosm of this same great experience with somewhat smaller budget. So definitely go out there and compete. Let's go around the room real quick and let folks know where they can find you. Jessa, why don't you kick us off?
You can find me at Jigsaw Jessa on Instagram.
Josh?
I am at Trauger on Instagram.
Do you want to spell that?
Trauger.
Awesome. Alice?
My Instagram is at Alice is Puzzled.
Makes me laugh every time. Lewis?
My puzzle Instagram is Theater Tech and Puzzles, with a period in between each word, and specifically theater is spelled with an R-E at the end instead of E-R.
All right, EB.
I'm at Puzzle Free or Die.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining me. This has been great. I especially love the love and the reflection of that in here. Thank you for coming and sharing that with all of us. Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.